You're watching Scriptease. In today's episode, we'll be breaking down a few scenes from Django Unchained. You can expect mature themes and spoilers for the whole film. As much as I like to get all flowery and chat about characters and themes, when I first sit down to watch a movie, my interest is usually far more surface level. It's about the plot, the logical sequence of events. For me, if the plot doesn't make sense, then the film falls apart. Even more esoteric works, like the filmography of David Lynch, still have an internal logic. Mulholland Drive is a trippy dream for half of its runtime, but each step inside the dream still has a rational connection to the one that preceded it. Of course, just making sense is the bare minimum an audience should expect of a film. A great plot keeps you on tenterhooks through tension, conflict, and surprise. Of these three elements, surprise is often mistreated. Simply subverting expectations, Game of Thrones, does not make for an enjoyable surprise. Surprising the audience is a balancing act. On one hand, you don't want the audience to see the surprise coming, but on the other hand, after the initial shock of the surprise, you want the audience to realize that it was foreshadowed the whole time. Now, I could go on and on about what makes a great surprise in a film. Seriously, if you have a free hour, send me a DM. But for today, let's just focus on how to foreshadow a turn in your story. Django Unchained has a fantastic turn at the end of the second act, which completely shifts the direction of the plot. The deaths of Dr. Schultz and Kelvin Candie. Quentin Tarantino sets up Candie as the main antagonist, holding Django's love Broomhilda captive as a slave. Therefore, the audience expects the climax of the film to be some form of showdown between Django and Candie, with Broomhilda serving as the stakes character. Instead, Candie is killed off by Django's mentor, Dr. Schultz. But before I can properly defend this turn, let's track all of the events that got us to this point, focusing primarily on Schultz's motivation behind killing Candie. At the beginning of the film, Schultz purchases Django, rather forcibly, and enlists his help in identifying a potential bounty, the Brittle brothers. To this end, Schultz gives Django a rudimentary course in bounty hunting, and Django is then put through his paces. For the entirety of the first act, Django is a tool to Schultz. This is best put by Schultz himself in his first proper conversation with Django. On one hand, I despise slavery. On the other hand, I need your help, and if you're not in a position to refuse, all the better. It's like he knows that slavery is wrong philosophically, but has never learnt that lesson from experience. His indifference is best demonstrated in his casual comparison of slavery and bounty hunting. Well, the way the slave trade deals in human lives for cash, a bounty hunter deals in corpses. During the hunt for the Brittle brothers, Schultz plays the mentor role to Django in every scene. He teaches him how to shoot and claim bounties, but most importantly, he teaches him how to deceive. Django, you have to. It's part of the act. You're playing a character. Remember what I told you. During the act, you can never break character. The pretense of this section of the film is that Django is learning to become a bounty hunter and throw off the shackles of slavery. However, the underlying parallel story shows Django teaching Schultz about humanity through his love of Broomhilda. In the campfire scene, Schultz tells Django the story of Siegfried. He walks through hellfire because Broomhilda is worth it. And after a thought-provoking pause, indicated by the ellipsis and explicit acknowledgement of the fact by Tarantino, they have this bonding moment. I know how he feels. I think I'm just starting to realize that. Schultz is captivated by Django's courage, by the romantic ideal of a gallant hero saving his true love. In all the sweet talking and soft soaping, Schultz never talks about his emotions. It's not that he isn't clever enough or skilled enough, he just never had the right motivation. But through Django, he learns what passion is. I've never given anybody their freedom before. When a German meets a real-life Siegfried, it's kind of a big deal. From this point onward, Schultz is emotionally invested in Django's uprising. In Greenville, Schultz is confronted with the appalling reality of slavery. Dr. Schultz takes in this African flesh market, where human beings sell other human beings, with disgust and a little bit of shock. It's one thing to hear about a tragedy or injustice, but quite another thing to experience it firsthand. Perhaps sadder still is when your life is so filled with torment that you become desensitized to it, as is the case with Django. Throughout this second act, we'll see this juxtaposition between the two bounty hunters' reactions repeated again and again. A face is now put on the twisted morals of slavery. Kelvin Candie. Candie is rotten to the core. He is cruel, conceited, and completely fake. In the final film, we first meet Candie as he watches a Mandingo fight, two slaves fighting to the death. In the script, we're actually introduced to Candie earlier. We see him cheat to acquire Broomhilda as a wager in a poker game from her previous owner. He then barges into her room and chases her naked through the hotel with his belt. So before Django and Schultz actually meet Candie, we the readers already know that he is a cheater, a liar, and an abuser. For Django and Schultz, however, they know only by reputation that Candie is deplorable, but they're about to learn it for themselves. The Cleopatra Club is a facade of multicultural influence that implies its owner is well-read and well-travelled. Candie's lawyer, Mogi, tells Django and Schultz that Candie is a Francophile, yet when Schultz speaks French, Mogi stops him. Oh, he doesn't speak French. Don't speak French to him, it'll embarrass him. Candie is obsessed with his image to the point of falsifying it to appear more cultured. He backs up this initial impression by rudely addressing Schultz, keeping his back to the duo and asking abrupt and aggressive questions without first exchanging introductions. Of course, disregard for social etiquette is the least appalling of Candie's traits. Candie cheers on his slave to brutally kill another slave. When the deed is done, Candie casually sends off the dead man and asks for his associate to pay up their puny bet, a mere $10 riding on the slave's life. That's only a couple $100 by today's estimate. While Candie is thrilled by Bloodsport, Schultz attempts to hide his disgust. Schultz has schooled Django on the importance of never breaking character. Well, now the good doctor must practice what he preaches. This is a preliminary trial, a sign of things to come. Once more, it brings the brutal reality of slavery to Schultz's feet. He can't ignore it. This scene sets a template for the conflict between our bounty hunting duo and Candie. As Django and Schultz move in convoy to Candyland, the name of which is yet another sign of Candie's hyperinflated ego, they come across a slave surrounded by tracking dogs. The slave, D'Artagnan, is a runaway Mandingo fighter. After seeing the torment that Mandingos are put through, both the reader and Schultz easily sympathize with D'Artagnan's attempt to escape. We get a lengthy description of D'Artagnan to stick him in our mind. One look at D'Artagnan tells you that he's a Mandingo who's been in one fight too many. D'Artagnan has been truly beaten down, yet Candie gives him no mercy. When D'Artagnan pleads that he can't fight anymore, Candie responds, "Oh yes you can. You might not be able to win, but your ass can fight." And yet still, Candie's morals sink even lower. He toys with D'Artagnan. Now, no begging, no playing on my soft heart. Not only is he callous, he's sadistic too. As with the initial Mandingo fighting scene, Schultz is completely out of his element and struggles to keep up his facade. This whole spectacle is making Dr. Schultz sick to his stomach. In an attempt to save D'Artagnan, Schultz drops the charade, much to the surprise of the other white people. "I'll reimburse you." All eyes turn to Dr. Schultz. Kelvin Candie uses the occasion to perform a slow dramatic turn in the direction of the good German. Tarantino's exaggeration of this moment lets the reader know just how much Schultz is really messed up. Dr. Schultz realizes that he's just done the one thing that he's always preached to Django you can never do: break character. Luckily, Django steps in to cover Schultz, and insists that they will not pay for D'Artagnan. Even as the dogs rip D'Artagnan apart, Django is able to hold his nerve, because he's used to seeing the horrors inflicted by men like Candie. Django, who expected nothing less and has seen worse, doesn't blink as the runaway slave is torn to bits by canine teeth. Schultz, on the other hand, suffers through D'Artagnan's screams. Dr. Schultz has never seen a man torn apart by dogs before, and he appears not to enjoy it. This scene escalates the feelings established in the Mandingo scene, with Schultz growing increasingly uncomfortable with Candie's torturous treatment of his slaves. Schultz's persona has now been demonstrated to be fallible. Given the right pressure, it can break. At Candyland, the group has dinner while discussing the purchase of a Mandingo fighter. Of course, Django and Schultz are also trying to buy Broomhilda her freedom. To do so, they must sit through the tiresome, self-aggrandizing delusions of Candie and co. Just imagine having to smile through an evening of the person you hate most in the world prattle on about how smart they are. Someone who says things like, "No one appreciates the value of showmanship more than Monsieur Kelvin J. Candie," and "allow the old sage to advise." Meanwhile, the gathered sycophants laugh at their every joke, boosting their ego even further. Perhaps the only thing that could keep you going as you pretend to laugh along is the thought that, by the end of this, you'll have pulled one over on them. And so, you endure with that goal in mind, even flattering the person that you truly despise. You know, Monsieur Candie, you do possess the power of persuasion. Schultz and Django are put in that position, but heightened to the nth degree. The duo must watch on as Candie exploits Broomhilda's scars for entertainment. I'm sure it would fascinate him, the nigger's endurance for pain. Schultz is disgusted by the sight, but still he and Django endure. Unfortunately, shortly thereafter, Candie's right-hand man, Stephen, figures out the bounty hunter's ploy and informs Candie. Candie, outraged, calls them out and demands that they pay an exorbitant price for Broomhilda. At gunpoint, the duo is forced to pay up. Django and Schultz react very differently to this turn of events. Django, while disappointed, has finally been reunited with Broomhilda. His journey is complete, and the signing of Broomhilda's bill of sale is merely a formality. Schultz, on the other hand, has had his victory snatched from him. Dr. Schultz sits off by himself. He's very disturbed. He was supposed to have hoodwinked Candie. This was meant to be his moment of silent retribution. Instead, it seems that evil has won. Candie's wrongdoings will go unpunished. Tarantino skillfully places moments through the story that demonstrate Schultz's growing disgust for Candie and the practice of slavery. While the reader has primarily followed Django's struggle, Tarantino has subtly built up Schultz's arc in parallel. These moments finally pay off in this scene, the hero's low point. In the film, we're reminded of Schultz's disgust with flashbacks of D'Artagnan's death. When Candie boasts about his victory, Schultz can't help but take a stab at him, revealing him as a fake.
You brooding about me getting the best of you, huh?
Actually, I was thinking of that poor devil you fed to the dogs today. Now, if Alexandre Dumas had been there today, I wonder what he would have made of it.
You doubt he'd approve, huh?
Yes.
Soft-hearted Frenchie.
Alexandre Dumas is black.
Schultz's pot shot gets under Candie's skin, exposing him as having absolutely no idea about the literature he claims to understand. In the film, this irony is made even clearer by having Schultz stare at Candie's many bookshelves. The implication here is, of course, that Candie has probably never read many of these books. Schultz then moves to make an exit with one last parting shot.
Mr. Candie. Normally, I would say auf Wiedersehen. But since what auf Wiedersehen actually means is till I see you again, and since I never wish to see you again, to you, sir, I say goodbye.
Now the two men's egos have taken center stage. Candie, desperate for Schultz not to have the last word, calls him back. Candie insists that Schultz shakes his hand. It implies good faith. In this action, Candie is asking Schultz to show him respect. A lot of people don't understand this moment. They feel like if Schultz has come this far, then he should just shake Candie's hand and be done with it. Hopefully by now, you realize how difficult of a task this is for someone like Schultz. He refuses to show respect to Candie because he truly loathes him. To shake his hand, even after the ruse is up, would be like bowing to a sadistic murderer in honor. So Schultz refuses, and Candie closes the gap, insisting. It's almost childish that amidst the horror and brutality of the slave's treatment, these two white men are concerned with their egos. I think you are a bad loser, and I think you're an abysmal winner. And yet, childish though it may be, the audience is completely on Schultz's side. There's that voice inside us that wants Candie to get his comeuppance, to pay for what he's done, what he'll keep doing. And Tarantino feeds off this desire by building tension, pitting Schultz and Candie against one another. Then we get this line. Schultz looks to Django, then to Candie, and then, with a smile on his face and a twinkle in his eye, asks Candie, "You really want me to shake your hand?" From this point on, the attentive reader gets excited, thinking, is he really gonna do it? No way. With a series of single lines and ellipses, Tarantino builds hype for the moment, and then, pop. Schultz takes Candie out, giving a simple explanation before getting blasted to pieces. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. And in essence, he's right. He knew it wasn't the right thing to do. He knew the ramifications for himself, Django, and Broomhilda, but the pure pleasure of besting Candie was just too tempting. Films are so often about wish fulfillment, and Django Unchained certainly fits into that category. When looking at Schultz's arc throughout the story, it makes complete sense that he is the one to clash with Candie. To Django, Candie is just another slaver. He's seen them all his life, and we're constantly reminded that the terrible acts he carries out are nothing new to Django. For Schultz, however, Candie is the first slaver whose actions have confronted him to this extreme. Add on top of this Candie's transparent veneer of culture and egregious self-involvement, and he becomes a truly detestable foil to Schultz. So certainly the turn is foreshadowed, and the turn is appropriate to the characters involved. But there is one more key reason that this turn works: the fallout. Since we expected Candie to be Django's antagonist, when he is removed, there must be someone whom Django can have his retribution against in the third act. Tarantino sets up Steven as this antagonist. Steven is one of the few characters who can match Candie's moral depravity. While Candie carries out injustices on slaves, Steven, who is black himself, watches on. More than that, he supports Candie. He's Candie's right-hand man, his confidant. Steven represents the black men who, rather than fight for equality, accept their circumstances and perpetuate the cycle of slavery. As such, even though Candie is removed, Steven takes his place. Furthermore, the turn thrusts Django into more peril rather than saving him from danger. Compare this to a scene where the hero is saved by some forgotten accomplice at the last second. In this case, the surprise saves the hero and cheapens the story, feeling like Deus Ex Machina. In Django Unchained, however, Schultz's actions result in Django being captured by his enemies rather than riding off with his wife. This turn at the end of the second act of Django Unchained is successful for three key reasons. It's subtly foreshadowed by earlier scenes, it fits the motivations and personalities of the characters involved, and it still leaves enough drama for the third act. When crafting sudden turns in your own stories, ask yourself if you're just going for shock value, or whether the turn actually enriches your plot. Good writing and good luck.